Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Make Your Website Work for You. My name is Robin O'Shea and I am the webinar facilitator. A transcript of this webinar containing details and links to the referenced resources will be available to participants. If you'd like an electronic copy of the transcript, send an email to info@rokaygroup.com with the subject line, Website Transcript. Interactive questions are not available on this webinar. If you do have a question, you can scroll down just below the presenter's slides on your screen. You will see a button to email the host. By pressing that button, you'll be able to submit a question and you'll receive a reply after the webinar. And now, let me introduce our webinar presenter. Mr. Bob Bundy is the president of Rokay Services Group, a firm focused on improving their customers' sales and marketing efforts to help them generate more sales. Mr. Bundy has over 30 years of experience in technology, sales, and marketing. He's developed his first marketing website and his first interactive web application, both in 1995. Bob has agreed to accept questions directly via his personal email and telephone after the webinar concludes. He also agreed to provide a special offer to webinar participants that will be described at the conclusion of the webinar. And now I will turn over the webinar to Mr. Bob Bundy.
Thanks, Robin, and thanks everybody who's participating today. I hope this is a good use of your time, gives you good value and some good ideas for improvements you might make to your website. Now, I have a few learning objectives for today's session. First, I'd like to help everybody who's listening understand why your organization created a website in the first place. Now, your website might be 6 months old because you're a new organization, or it could be 23 years old and you've had the website for that long. But everybody's reason for creating the website out there could be different. And so I want everybody listening to kind of think about your own organization and get in your head why you created a website. Second, I'd like to help everybody listening understand what you wanted from a results standpoint from your website when you created it. And again, if you created your website 12 years ago, what results were you expecting from your website? Now again, everybody listening might have a different answer based on your organization. And last, I'm going to talk a little bit about, not a little bit, I'm going to talk the majority of our time today about if your website is not delivering what you expect it to from a results standpoint. I'm going to give you different ideas of how you can improve your website and make it work better for you. Now, as Robin mentioned a couple seconds ago, we do have a transcript of today's session. So I'm going to be referring to some websites and some reference materials and some articles and those sort of tools. And those are all listed in the transcript. So if anybody listening is interested in getting that so you don't have to scribble all this stuff down furiously, just let me know. I'm more than happy to pass this along. Now, your organization has a website. Maybe you're a small accounting firm with just 2 employees. Maybe you're a medium-sized construction company and you have 300 employees. Maybe you're a huge nonprofit spread out all over the country or all over the world. It doesn't really matter. For a session like this, whenever I talk with customers about improving their website or improving their results, I always start with 2 questions, and I'm going to start with those same 2 questions today, and I'd like everybody listening to think of the answers as they apply to your organization. The very first question is, why did you build a website for your organization in the first place? Okay. Now, the typical answer that I get, and I do get different answers, but the typical answer I get goes something like this. Well, Bob, everybody has a website. All of our competitors have a website. If we didn't have a website, people wouldn't think that we were a real organization. Now, interestingly enough, 15 or 20 years ago, that probably would not have been the real answer. Today, that is the number one answer that people give me. If we don't have a website, we don't look like a real organization. And I get it. Today, whenever I want information about just about anything, I whip out my phone if I'm not sitting at my desk and I Google it. And it doesn't matter if I am, looking for a restaurant or a movie review, or I'm looking to find an electrician, or I'm going to the doctor and I want some information about my doctor. If they don't have a website, And some of those kind of organizations don't. But if they don't have a website, I find that I am much more likely to pass on them and go to the next candidate in line. So I get that answer and I understand that answer. Okay. Now, that might not be your answer. When I talk to public organizations, public government like a school district or like a Parks and Recreation department for a city, their answer about why they built their website would be completely different. In the school district example, a lot of times they'll tell me that they built a website to communicate between the school district and the parents or the families of the kids in the school. So your answer may be a little bit different. Okay? Now, the second question I ask is, when you built it, what did you expect your website to do for your organization? And again, everybody listening, think about the answer. Again, regardless of whether your website is 6 months old or 6 years old. Now, again, a lot of people tell me, well, we didn't really expect it to deliver anything other than tell people that we're really an organization. Okay, and that's the legitimacy answer. They didn't really have a plan for it. They just were doing it to make it look like they were a real organization. But for the people who really did have a mission or a goal for their website, the number one answer that people give me is, we wanted it to attract new business or new customers to our organization. Basically, we thought, hey, anybody can get out on the internet and find us now. They don't have to have the local yellow pages. They don't have to have our direct phone number. Anybody can find us. So our website will deliver lots more business to us. Okay? Now, your organization may have completely different answers to those two questions. And if you do, please give me a phone call after the session or drop me an email, because I would love to hear the answers to those questions. I always like hearing people who are doing things a little bit differently or have different missions. Okay, so you thought about why you built your website in the first place, and you thought about what the initial results were that you wanted it to deliver. But here's the deal. Is your website delivering something different today, or do you have expectations of a different results today than you did when you built it? Okay. Now, some folks, some organizations like eBay, for example, they would say their website is their business, and it's always been their business. They don't expect it to deliver anything different than it always has. 100% interaction with their customers. They don't really want to talk to people on the phone or email or stuff like that. They want their website to handle everything. But for the majority of the folks that I talk to, most of them would still say that they want their website to attract more business for them. Okay? So if you want your website to attract more business in the form of more customers, what are you doing about it? Especially if it's not delivering what you expect. What steps are you taking to make improvements? And that's really the crux of today's webinar. So first, let me talk about the continuum for that purpose. On one end of the continuum, we have kind of the static web page, what I call the online yellow pages ad. Basically, they've got a website, it's got their name, it's got their address, it might have a couple of pages on some of their services or products, and an About Us page. And that's about it. It doesn't change, it's not really updated. It's just kind of there, and it's been there for years. And believe me, there's lots of organizations for whom who have websites like that have been like that for years and years and years. Okay? Now, I call that, as I mentioned, the online yellow pages ad. And I mentioned this in a meeting kind of recently, and somebody, obviously pretty young, says, Bob, what are yellow pages? Help me out with that. I thought, holy cow, I am getting really old. I don't think it's that long ago that yellow pages were really, in everybody's house. But I have to admit, I haven't thought about it much. We haven't had yellow pages in our house for a long time. Anyway, that's at one end of the continuum. On the other end of this continuum, we have a business for whom their website is the entire business. Okay, so Amazon or eBay or lots of online retailers whose website is their business. And if their business is down, or if their website is down, their business is down. So where do most websites end up? Well, the people who come to me or I'm working with, they want to make improvements in their websites because their website is really delivering kind of down at this end, the left-hand side of that continuum. It's basically kind of there. Okay, it may have a little bit more to it than just a static web page, but it's not really doing a whole lot to help them deliver on their number one purpose, getting more customers. Okay, so when I talk, and I'm going to talk about during this webinar, making your website work for you or improving what your website's doing for you, what do I mean? Well, what I mean is moving this circle from the left to the right as far as is feasible for your organization. Now, if you're a doctor's office, your website will never be your entire business, right? If you're a professional services firm, an accountant, or a lawyer, somebody like that, your website will never be your entire business. But if it's just sitting there, kind of the online Yellow Pages ad, it probably can do a whole lot more for you than it's doing right now in two key areas. First one is attracting new customers, new potential customers, new business to your organization, and engaging your current customers so that you are always top of mind with them. If you're a carpeting company, and people have bought carpet from you, you want them to think about you every time they think about carpet. Or you want them to think about you every time they think of pool supplies or something like that. Okay, for the majority of our remaining time, I'll talk about ways to move your website from the left more to the right on that line. Basically, adding more value to your organization. But before I do that, I need to cover a topic that's super critical. I'll do that real quickly, but it's something that a lot of organizations actually spend very little time on. It is making sure that your content can be found. Okay, most folks assume when they publish a website or they publish a new page on their website that the search engines will just find it. And that's true. Sooner or later, the search engines will find it, but it's going to take a while. So if your website is relatively new, or if you are constantly changing your website, updating your website with blog posts or new pages about new products or services, something like that, it's going to take the search engines time to catch up to that. Now, each of the search engines that I have listed here does have instructions on ways that you can tell the search engine to index your content. And in the transcript of today's webinar, I have links to those instructions for all of these. And that is something I recommend to all of my customers on a monthly or at least bi-monthly basis, that they are constantly notifying the search engines about their website and having them re-index just in case something has changed. Now, one of the other search engines that I have listed up here is YouTube. And a lot of people don't think of YouTube as a search engine, but it is the number 2 search engine behind Google. So if your website has any video content and any of that video content is driven by YouTube, you need to make sure that your content can be found on YouTube too when people do a search there. Okay? So once the search engines know about your content, you need to make sure that people will find your content on the search engines. And here's the term that a lot of people use. We have no time to do any justice to this, but I do want to let people know what it is. Search engine optimization, or SEO. Basically what that means is having your content, whether that's a web page or your website, show up as high as possible in the search results when somebody does a search. So let's take an example. I go out to Google and I type in the word paint and I hit search. Google's going to return results to me one page at a time, and there are 10 results on a page. The most popular results are going to be at the top. The least popular results are going to be at the bottom. If there are, wait for it, 3 billion, that's billion with a B, results in Google with paint, that means there are 300 million pages, because each page has 10 results on it, out there. I don't want to be on page 300 million. I want to be on page 1 or page 2 at the very least. And search engine optimization is the techniques and tools that you use to get your content to show up as high as possible. Now, why is that important? Here's why that's important. 95, actually it's closer to 96% of people who click on something in the search results click on something on page 1. If you're on page 2, your chances of being clicked on have just dropped dramatically. If you're on page 3, sorry. If you're on page 10, nobody's even made it halfway down to see you, okay? SEO is all the things that you can do to have your results show up higher. Okay. Now, again, in the transcript, I have links to several really good SEO tools, techniques, resources, a lot of resources that I use when I'm doing SEO for content on my website as well. Okay, so again, another reason to ask for the transcript. The other way to get your stuff to show up high in the results is to pay for it. You can pay for ads in any of the search engines. So if somebody looks up the word paint, it's going to return 300 or 3 billion results, but your stuff could show up at the very top. Now, the way that Google and Yahoo and Bing and all those guys work is if it's a popular search term and a lot of people want it, you're going to pay more to show up at the top of the rankings. Okay, so that's how they make their money. And so you can have your stuff show up at the top without going through SEO, but you have to pay for it. Okay. Now, my number one SEO tip is to come up with a niche search term, not just the term paint. Come up with a different search term. So here I went out to Google and I typed in exterior paint, desert homes. I happen to live in the desert Southwest. So if I was looking for paint, I would not be looking for marine paint. I might not be looking for interior paint. I'm looking for exterior paint for desert homes. And one of the things you notice that I have circled there is that there are only 9.5 million results. When I say only 9.5 million, that's still a huge number, right? But it's a lot less than 3 billion. So just by getting a more focused search term, I've winnowed down the number of search results a ton. And so my recommendation to people is that they come up with a very niche search term and try to dominate that market. Now, interestingly enough, one of my websites is number one in Google for its search term. And there are 8.3 million results when people put that search result in. But because of some SEO, I didn't pay for that. I didn't use an ad. Because of SEO techniques that I use, my webpage shows up number one. And not only does it show up number one, but it's also in position number two. So that's very exciting. So I know that that technique works. Okay. Now, there are other ways to get visibility for your web page, and let's talk about a couple of those real quick. First, if you have a business page on any of the social media sites, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, something like that, make sure that your website address, www.whatever.com, is prominently displayed on a very regular basis. So if you're tweeting something, make sure that the tweet also has your web page in there if possible. Don't tweet so much that you can't get your web page in there. If you post something on Facebook or LinkedIn, make sure that your website address is there. Okay. Other ways, when you do public speaking events or things like this webinar, for those of you who are paying attention, at the very beginning of the webinar, I had a page that had not only my contact information, but also my website address on it. That same slide will come up at the end of today's presentation as well. And again, reinforcing my website address. Just recently, I did a presentation for a large education state event here in the Southwest. And believe me, the slides that I used had my website prominently displayed. So anytime you have an opportunity to do public speaking of any kind, make sure that you're referencing your website. All of your marketing literature, including your business cards, needs to have your website on it. Okay? And that includes your email signature. I have to say, this is something that a lot of organizations don't spend a whole lot of time focusing on. Big organizations do. Organizations with a dedicated marketing function do, but a lot of them don't. As a matter of fact, I got 3 emails in the last 2 days from people from the same company, and they all use completely different email address blocks at the bottom of each email. Now, my email address block, which I've got up here, has information about me, of course, but it also has my website address on there, and that's super important. Because if you write 50 emails a day, that's 50 times people are seeing your email address. Now, Why is all this important? I'm going to give you a real life example that just occurred to me recently. I was referred by my regular doctor to a specialist for a knee issue. Okay, they gave me a business card. On my way home, I called and set up an appointment. A little bit later, a couple days later, because the appointment was for 2 or 3 weeks out, a couple days later, I wanted to go out and actually find out about this new knee doctor that I have. But I couldn't remember the information about the doctors. I didn't have the business card with me. I was, that was in my office. So I just went out to Google and I did a search for, the knee doctor and the town that I knew his office was in. Because I'd already made the appointment. I knew the town. And I couldn't find it. It didn't show up. And, for that doctor, for that episode, it wasn't really that big of a deal because I already had an appointment. I'd been referred there directly by my regular doctor. But what if I didn't have an appointment? What if I was looking for a knee doctor? Or what if I was looking for an eye doctor or a paint store and their stuff is not available? It is so important for people to be able to find you now on the internet so you don't miss on business. So that's why I wanted to cover this topic real quickly, making sure that people can find you. Okay, so now folks can find your website. Let's work on moving your website further to the right on our line. For new visitors, we really want your website to convert them into prospects and then ultimately into customers, right? For your existing customers, we want your website to inspire them to remain your customer and to keep buying more stuff from you. But here are a couple of tips that you can use to engage anybody, whether they're a returning customer or whether they're a brand new visitor, some ways to engage them when they come to your website. First, you have to keep your website current. I went out to a website last week and I just happened to hit their upcoming events link, went out there. Their most current upcoming event was 6 months ago. Now, I don't get the idea, when I visit some sites like that and I see that, I don't get the idea that they're much of an ongoing enterprise if I see their stuff that far in the past. Or at least I know they don't really pay attention to detail, so maybe I'll go check out the next one on my list. The next one is scaling your website for different kinds of devices. Now, the term that people use here is a responsive website. And if you don't have a responsive website, you are way behind the curve. That's a website that changes the way it looks to respond to the type of devices the user has. Okay? So here's a picture of my website looking at it from a desktop computer standpoint. It's nice and wide. It takes up the entire screen, all kinds of stuff like that. Now, here is that same website looking at it from like a handheld or a telephone, a smartphone viewpoint. It rescaled automatically. And it put the menu, even though you can't really see it here, that blue button with the 3 lines in it, which is called a hamburger menu. The menu was there. And the website did that automatically without me having to do anything. Okay? So regardless of what devices my visitors use, they're going to be able to access the functionality. If it were not a responsive website, when they looked at it on their phone, they would see something like this. They would see my main page, but they would see it scaled for a big wide screen, only they have a little dinky telephone. And of course, they'd have to scroll back and forth and up and down. And I've got to tell you, this happens to me when I'm looking at websites on my mobile devices. It doesn't take but 5 or 10 seconds of that kind of frustration for me to leave the site. Okay, so make sure that your website is responsive. Next one is to make sure that your generic contact information, your phone, your email address, your mailing address are easily visible on the first page, regardless of the type of organization you are. Don't make people hunt for it. My pet peeve, my biggest pet peeve, well, not my biggest pet peeve, but one of my biggest pet peeves is a website that has no mailing address, any place. I'm trying to find out if this is a real organization, and I go to the Contact Us page, and there's nothing there. There's maybe an email address, there's no phone number, there's no mailing address. I have no idea where these people are. Are they in my time zone, or am I going to have to wait 3 hours for the time zones to change? Okay. Last one is video. Landing pages that have video have an 80% higher conversion rate than pages that are just text. Well, what does that mean? That means if 100 people come to visit your site and 10 people click on something, or 10 people give you their email address for you to send them some information, that means if your page has video on it, instead of 10 out of 100, you'll get 18 out of 100. And that is a huge improvement. Okay? 4 times as many people will watch a video about a product than will read a text page about it. So, on your website, I always recommend to my customers, where it's appropriate, to use video wherever possible. Make sure that it is compelling. Make sure that it gives them information. I went out to a website that had video on it just a couple of days ago, it seems like, and the web page starts and the video starts automatically. It's dramatic music with nobody talking or anything like it. Very dramatic, symphonic music with lots of pictures or video of people in an office handing paper to each other or talking in the hallway or stuff like that. That's not really compelling to me. That tells me that they have an office and that they have people in their office and that they like classy music, but that went on, and it wasn't maybe 5 seconds before I hit mute, trying to pay attention to what's on their website because the video didn't tell me anything. Now it's time to talk about visitors to your website that you would love to convert into customers. Now, how you interact with these folks is dependent on the type of organization that you are. First, I'm going to start with the kind of visitors who are going to make an immediate purchase. Now, if you're an Amazon or an eBay, you have focused your entire website on making it easy for them to purchase. But let's talk about other types of organizations where the customer might make an immediate purchase, but maybe not from the website. Okay? So the first one is a retail outlet, a retail store. You have a storefront, people walk in to buy things from you. In that case, you're probably using your website as your Yellow Pages ad to give people information about what they can buy from you. So let's say that you are a swimming pool supply store. And what should your website have on it to convert the website visitors into people who will actually walk into your store? Well, here they are in no particular order. You should have your physical address. Make that easy to find. I have seen way too many stores that force customers to find, well, potential customers to find their address by clicking multiple places. Your website or your address should be right there, easy to find. The hours of your operation, including any special hours for holidays, your direct phone number, not the phone number to your corporate headquarters, your direct phone number should be right there. Other things, a picture of your storefront. So if they pull into a great big strip mall or where there's tons of stores, they can see you from all the way across the parking lot. If you have staff members in your store who are there on a regular basis, have their pictures right there on the fronts with their first name so that people who are visiting don't feel like they're talking to strangers. Now, all of those things that I just talked about should be front and center on your web page without forcing the user to click on anything or scroll any place. They should see all those things. Other things in a retail setting. Some incentive to come in. Maybe you tell them that for walk-in customers today, you have a coupon. They print the coupon, they bring it in, they get 5% off of whatever their purchase is. If you're having a sale, that definitely needs to be listed on your web page. And so many places, retail-wise, have just their standard web page and they don't list their sales or special offers or something like that. Make it easy for your customer, for your visitor, to turn into a customer. Make them get in their car. It's just too enticing not to get in their car and come and see you. All right, now there are other kinds of companies, maybe not retail, but like a services company, plumber or exterminator or electrician maybe. So your first page should list your services, okay? Especially things like emergency services. If I'm looking for an exterminator, I've got a bug problem or maybe a rodent problem. If I'm looking for a plumber, it might be that I'm doing an addition to the house, but it could be that I'm having trouble with my existing sinks or my dishwasher or something like that. Make sure that if you have a hotline or a way to get in touch with you 24/7, text message, page or something like that, that it's listed right there. And one of the recommendations that I give to service companies is to have a video. And remember, we've talked about how strong video is to attract people's attention. Having a video right there on the front page when people visit a firm like this, explaining your services, explaining that you care about them, explaining that you're going to solve their problems, explaining that they can get a hold of you right now and we'll be out there in 15 minutes. That kind of video is very powerful for converting these kind of visitors into customers. Okay. Last one that I'll talk about is an immediate purchase for the type of company where they can come into your organization and buy stuff, but they can buy things from your website. And one of the best examples that I have to give for this is the airline industry. I prefer Southwest Airlines. It's an airline that I fly a lot, and their website is perfect to illustrate this. Yes, I can call Southwest on the phone. I can go down to the airport and go to their ticket counter and buy tickets. But they make it so easy to buy tickets on their web page, okay? I can also do things like check my connections or check in for my flight or see what the flight schedule is next week or something like that. But the number one thing that I can do in big letters or big bold print right there in the front of their page is buy a ticket. And they make it super easy to do that. Okay, those are some ideas for immediate purchase kind of things, whether you're retail all the way up to people buying things on your website. Let's talk about the situation where you're the type of organization that has a longer sales cycle. So I used to work in the enterprise software system industry. And the enterprise software is software that runs organizations. It runs a hospital. It runs a school district. It runs all the financials for a great big huge public company, something like that. Enterprise software sales, their sales cycle is 9, 12, 18 months long. So a visitor to my website is not going to buy if I'm an enterprise software company. And there are lots of other organizations like that too. Maybe you're a heavy equipment supplier and you have giant dump trucks. People who are coming to your website are probably not going to buy 25 dump trucks from your website, but they're there for a specific reason, to find information. And again, you'd like to convert those people, you'd love to convert them into customers, but first you have to convert them from a visitor into a prospect. Okay, because this is going to be a long sales cycle, and at some point that prospect will start interacting with your sales team. So let's talk about the websites for these types of organizations. Okay, first I say you need to entice them with information. And I have different types of information listed up here, case studies, different checklists of information, videos that they can watch about the products or services, research resources, maybe webinars. As a matter of fact, that's why I use webinars in the way that I'm using it. This webinar right here, I am providing information to my visitors, hoping that they will turn into prospects or customers, right? So it's a trade-off. When I offer an enticement to a visitor, it's a two-way street. I'll give you all the information you need about the specifications, about the details, about the pricing, about this, about this. But what I'd like in turn from you is your contact information so that we can actually set up a conversation, because this is not a retail kind of sale. You're not going to look at a can of soup and decide to buy it or not. This is going to be a much longer, more involved sales cycle. So enticing them with information is one great thing to do. Now, I want to get their information, right? Their contact information. And once I get their contact information, I'm going to stay in touch with them. Now, how am I going to stay in touch with them? I am going to integrate their contact information with my email system into an email campaign. This might be a 12-month sales cycle. So I could have a salesperson call them immediately and say, how can I help you? But that might be a little intimidating, it might be a little threatening. You know, they're just out looking for some information. So I'm going to integrate their contact information with an email campaign, and I'm going to slowly give them some additional information. I'm going to slowly ask them for what kind of information and how far along they are down in the sales cycle. And ultimately, I will transition them to my sales team when we have a real conversation. It could be that after 3 or 4 emails, they opt out and say, not really interested in what you have, or it's not the time to purchase now. I'll come back at some point. An email campaign, especially a drip campaign. And a drip campaign is an email campaign that is automated, that automatically sends information to the visitor. It's typically non-threatening. They're not getting phone calls from salespeople saying, "Can I help you buy? Do you need to buy now?" All those kind of things. Drip campaigns are very, very effective in establishing a level of trust between your organization and that visitor, saying, we'll help you, we'll continue to help you. Do you need more information? At some point, you'll probably need to talk to a real live person if you want to continue getting more information. So now I've given you some tools to help your website maybe become a little bit more effective in converting visitors to either customers or visitors into prospects, who then ultimately you hope you can convert into customers. Now let's turn to existing customers. Anybody who's been in business very long can tell you that the best buyer of what you have to offer is somebody who's already a customer. You know who they are. They know who you are. They know what you offer. And, if they enjoyed their previous buying experience with you, they're already predisposed to buy from you again. So, how can you set up your website to keep those existing customers? Well, this is one area that I have to say a lot of organizations have ignored, using their website to maintain that ongoing relationship. But in the last couple years, it's pretty interesting to see retail businesses trying to embrace this. Now, how many times in the last 5 years have you all noticed that just about anywhere you go and buy something, whether it's McDonald's or Home Depot or any place like that, they hand you the receipt and they tell you there's a survey on the bottom of the receipt where you can go on their website and you'll be entered for some drawing for $100 or $500 or something like that. Now, do they really want to give away those prizes? Well, maybe they do. That's probably not their number one incentive in plugging that stuff at the bottom of their receipt, though. Do they really care about your feedback? Well, from a customer service standpoint or quality improvement, they probably do. But what they're really interested in is getting your contact information so they can establish a long-term customer conversation with you. Okay? That is one of the ways retailers are trying to establish a relationship that they've never had before. Before, in a retail setting, people would walk in, they'd buy something, they'd walk out, and you hoped they came back again at some point. Years ago, different retailers started introducing the frequent buyer kind of things where you earn points and that kind of stuff. And that gets a lot of people in and it helps them establish that relationship. But this new one helps them establish more relationships, a higher conversion rate of their retail customers into customers with a relationship. But if you're not a retailer, how can your website help you maintain that ongoing relationship with your customer? So let's look at some examples. One of the very best ways to use your website to maintain that relationship with your customers is to allow the customers access to information about themselves. Access, like some of the examples that I have up here, whether they're looking at their order history or whether they're looking at their payment history. If you're a doctor's office, a ton of doctor's offices now give access to give the patients access to their own medical records, their last visit, what their prescriptions were, what their test results were, all that kind of stuff. And then again, even for organizations who are just establishing that cursory first relationship, they have those award programs where you have the frequent buyer rewards and you can go in and redeem your points or print out coupons or things like that. Okay? Now, whenever your customers access these functions, you need to track that. You need to follow up on it and periodically you need to reach out personally. That's something that I think that's an opportunity that a lot of organizations don't take advantage of today. They have all these customer interactions through their website, and that's great, and that's really what we're talking about here on our webinar today. But taking it one step further and actually making that personal contact, reaching out with a phone call or something like that, just to say, how are you? We've noticed you've been using the website. Thanks very much. Anything else we can do for you? Without really trying to do a hard sell, that's a big additional plus. Okay, and that goes a long way to retaining that customer loyalty. Now, this is going to introduce a lot of issues. Not a lot. This could introduce some issues for you, especially when you need to integrate your website with all of the other systems that control this information. You might need to integrate your website with your billing system so that customers can see their account information. Again, if you're a doctor or a dentist or an eye doctor, you might have to integrate your website with your EHR or your EMR so that your patients or your customers can see their medical information. And you're going to have to make sure that that meets all the HIPAA protections about patient confidentiality and all that kind of stuff. You might have to integrate with the different shippers, UPS, FedEx, DHL, those guys, if you're going to offer tracking to your customers. So there could be some integrations that you're going to have to work through if you're going to offer these kind of things. Okay? Now, something else you might want to offer is information about your company. And I've worked in lots of companies where we had high contact with our customers. So I mentioned earlier I'd been in the enterprise software world, which means that customers use your software every day to run their enterprises, their hospitals, or their manufacturing companies or something like that. And when there's updates of the software or they have questions, they contact you. And it's not unusual for those customers to establish a very personal relationship with the people that they talk to every day. They have pictures of each other. They know each other's kids and that kind of stuff. So when things happen with your staff, you need to tell your customers about that. Let them know, hey, we have a new customer services person. Or Bob was just promoted from customer service to customer service supervisor. Help us congratulate Bob. You would be amazed. Maybe you wouldn't if you're already in this kind of world, but you would be amazed at how many customers will send Bob congratulations. But you can only do that when you're proactively contacting customers about this. Another one is open jobs, letting customers know that you have openings in your organization, and if they know somebody for it, that would be great. Sometimes a lot of customers actually want to work for the companies that for whom they are customers. That would be great for them. A lot of people would love to work for Southwest Airlines because they think Southwest Airlines has a great culture and a great business and all that kind of stuff. So promoting those open positions is a great idea. And even if they don't want to work for you, having a customer refer somebody to you cuts down on your recruiting costs from your HR department, and you already have a reference on somebody that they're recommending. So that's great information as well. Now, maintaining that relationship can be done other ways too. Letting your customers know when you have new products or new services. Establishing that relationship. Giving your customers birthday greetings. I have to say, every year, the first birthday card I ever get, it's not from my mother, although you'd think my mom would be first in line. It's always from my insurance agent, who, and I know it's automated and all that kind of stuff, but it is signed by the people in the insurance agency. It always comes to me probably a week and a half before my birthday. And it is just an additional touch. I do recognize it. I mean, enough to mention it on this webinar. Letting your customers know when you have special offers. Probably every 2 weeks, my wife gets a notice about a special at the pizza place, and it says, come to our website, print off the coupon, that kind of stuff, and boom, we have pizza every 2 weeks. It's a great way for them to ensure that they're going to get a pizza order from the Bundys. And last one is the newsletter and the blog. And the thing that I say about this, Newsletters have been a big deal in marketing to existing customers for years and years and years, but it's very difficult for organizations to keep them current. If you do it every month or every 3 months or twice a year, doesn't really matter. Somehow it seems that organizations and companies struggle to get the content for that. So my suggestion is to kind of get away from the newsletter, move more towards the blog, make the people come to your website to see this, and don't date your blog entries. You know, if I go out to a website, which I did yesterday, and I'm looking at their blog, and the last blog entry is from 4 years ago, again, I wonder, do they have enough staff? Are they really as on the ball as they appear to be? Or maybe are things a little tough at this organization? Maybe I want to work with somebody else. Okay, whenever your customers visit, make it worth their while. I'm a customer of lots of different places, and when I go to those websites, I want to be able to find what I want. If they have enticements or sales or other offers for me, I want to find those front and center. I want to be notified when there's something big going on so that I go to their website with a specific purpose. And you do that, you establish those long-term customer relationships, even if you are in a retail environment. And that adds lots of value to your business, and it adds lots of easily converted recurring revenue. Now, these are all things that are designed to help you move your website from the left on that line of value to the right. How far you move it kind of depends on your organization, your industry, the kinds of customers you have, and how you plan to use your website. Now, let me talk about how you're going to get this done. My website is what it is today, and Bob, you've got some great ideas, but how am I going to do all that? How am I going to get my website to convert these visitors into prospects or customers? How am I going to use my website to increase the relationship that I have and the communications I have with existing customers? Let's talk about that. Okay, so I've given you some different ideas on ways to have your website be more valuable, but I've talked about a few of those things that might sound kind of tricky. You know, integrating with your billing system or integrating with an email system. So how would you do that? Let me give you a few pointers for moving forward with something like this, okay? Well, first, it works a lot better if your website is not hand coded. Now, way back in the day, if your website is 20 some years old, it probably was hand coded. And setting up all these integrations with different platforms and tools can be very difficult. I always recommend to my customers that they use a content management system. That's basically a piece of software that manages your website. So you can add new articles, you can change the colors and all those sort of things using this software rather than going in and hand coding. Now, there are lots of different content management systems out there, but the three biggest ones that are most popular are Joomla, WordPress, and Drupal. And I'm not going to go into which one is better, which one has more features, which one does this better or not. I tend to use Joomla in the websites that I design, but WordPress and Drupal have millions of installations behind them as well around the country. So I always recommend to my customers that they investigate those. Now, if you do have a full e-commerce site, meaning you're going to have a full catalog and everybody who is your customer is going to buy off your website, you're not going to have a walk-in store or something like that, you can use and build a store on the Amazon and the eBay platforms, or you can build your own website using a content management system that's built specifically for e-commerce. And a couple of them out there are Magento and Shopify. Those are a couple of different examples. Now, as I mentioned before, I happen to use Joomla in the majority of the websites that I built. And for several customers, I have built e-commerce capabilities into their site using Joomla, using some of the plugins and the additions that are available for Joomla. But those were not a full-blown e-commerce website. So if you are going to go full e-commerce, giving your customers everything that they can do on your website rather than call you or come into a store or something like that, Magento or Shopify or other full e-commerce sites would be really good. Okay? Now, I will say, and I mentioned this before, that when I built a website for one of my customers, did integrate e-commerce capability into it so that their customers could buy things from their website. There are tons and tons, thousands of integrations that are available using those standard CMS packages, whether you're using Drupal or Joomla or WordPress or Magento or some of those. There are tons of modules that different people and different organizations have built to make it really easy to integrate your website with your accounting system, for example, or with your customer relationship management system, your customer support area, so that people can use your website to look up their support tickets that they have submitted and see how you've responded to them. Same thing with email marketing, or if you're a physician or in the medical world, there are integrations between your EMRs or your EHRs and your website. So there are a lot of those things that are pre-built that make it easy to plug things in and set up some of these functionalities that I have talked about. Now last, I'll mention that there are some what I call one-stop shop website management capabilities out there. You're an organization, you don't have a technical person, you don't have an accounting system, you don't have a marketing system, you don't have all this stuff. You can go to some of these one-stop shop places where they have solutions that will manage and run your website for you. It will also manage and run an email campaign program for you, and it will run a CRM or a customer management system for you. And these are some of the ones that I listed up there. If you're interested in those kind of things, and lots of organizations are, they don't want to set up their own systems. They want somebody else to take care of it for them and have all those integrations. Now the downside to this is you may not be able to do everything you want to do that you can, if you're using a CMS with lots of plug-in modules. But the trade-off for that is that you don't have to worry about all the integration. So HubSpot, Salesforce, some of these others are ones that are examples of that. Now, one of the things that I will say is the website focus for your customers should be current and relevant. If the website is not relevant to me as a customer, I'm just not going to use it. So people who give me a flyer that say, hey, go to our website. If I go to the website and it's just a website about them, tells me what their address is and a list of products, it's not really relevant to me. Okay? If it tells me how to buy something, or if it establishes a relationship that's meaningful to me, I will engage with it and continue to engage with it. Now, last caution that I have here is if you want your website to be all things to all people, okay, you want customers to go onto your website and buy things, use their credit card and buy stuff. You also want to post your jobs. You want to post information about your company. You want to post information about your offices or your hours. You build a website that does all those things. It can get kind of confusing and it can be very complex. Okay. Now, a good example that I point people to again is Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines, you can buy tickets, you can check your account, you can redeem tickets, you can cancel, you can look at their open jobs, you can read their stock reports and all that investor information. So they've done a good job, as have a lot of airlines, to put all that functionality on one website, and it's generally pretty easy to find what you want. But remember, the number one mission of their website is to have you buy tickets. So even though you can find all this other stuff, their number one mission for their website is make a sale. I'd like to take a quick second and summarize what I covered during the webinar today. Before I got into the details of ways to make your website work for you better, more valuable to you, I hit a couple things up front. First, I talked about ways you need to make sure that people can find your website, notifying the search engines, including YouTube, that your content is out there, and then investigating SEO or search engine optimization techniques to make sure that your website shows up in the results in the appropriate places. If it shows up on page 10 or page 30, nobody's going to find it, nobody's going to click on it. Then I did talk about the details of making your website work for you better. In the first instance, I gave you lots of different examples of ways that you could convert website visitors into customers, especially if you're in the immediate purchase area. They can convert them to customers really quickly. If you have a longer sales cycle in your business, you're going to convert them from visitors to prospects, and ultimately your sales team will probably take the ball and convert them from prospects into long-term customers. And last, we went through lots of different ways that you can use your website to build a long-term relationship and an ongoing communication with your customers to keep you top of mind with them, so that when they think of whatever you offer, they always think of you first. They don't even think about going anyplace else. Thank you all very much for participating in today's webinar. Hopefully, I will see you on a future webinar. I'm going to turn this back over to Robin to finish things up, and I've got my contact information on the screen if anybody wants to reach out. Take care.
Thank you, Bob, for your time and expertise during this webinar. I'd like to now share the offer that Rokay Services Group is making available to participants of this webinar. It is a free website improvement consultation. The engagement includes a review of your website by Mr. Bundy and a 30-minute phone consultation to discuss feedback, suggestions, and improvements that he might recommend. This offer is limited to one website per webinar participant. If you are interested, you can email Mr. Bundy directly and make arrangements. Thank you for attending today's webinar. We hope it provided you value. If you would like to receive updates on future Rokay webinars and information on other sales and marketing resources, you can go to the Rokay website and sign up. Have a great day.